So at first, some are hesitant. However, as Davy announces that he will not let anyone die on his watch and that he will also come to the operation, some somehow change their decision. That said, as night fell, Davy's troops are now sent to the goblin's lair. With his lead, Davy aims the arrow using his power shot at the goblins, initiating the bloodbath that will happen. However, caught off guard by Davy's sudden move, it seems like Davy's men are shocked that they will be making a frontal attack. After initiating the first attack, Davy's men are now frightened by the idea of what's going to happen next. However, before they can even start thinking of backing out, Davy has already thought of a brilliant idea. He uses his magic skills to share some of his mana with his men, making them incredibly high. And as a result of this spell, his men are now like fearless monsters who constantly slaughter goblins with no mercy. Back at the Hinds territory, some men left or temporary rich might not work, considering how the region is seen by another continent. As a result, there's only one thing that they can do, and it is to use whatever they have at their disposal. But before his plans take action, he must first eliminate the curse that's been bothering the land's growth. Using the spell called Ro-Ias, Davy tries to find the conditions of the curse as well as the medium used. Since a curse is technically a magic spell equation, as long as you find the right formula, one is able to alter the curse spell however they like. And the only thing that Davy is able to find from his debugging is that the curse only has one effect, and it's the specific condition maintenance, which explains why only certain weather is present in the region. Now that he's found one of the curse's cores, he is quite astonished as he enters the rocky areas where the said source is to turn out to be an ancient ruin. But to make things even better, as most in charge is, there's no possible way the region will flourish. Since many priests and magicians, even alchemists, have tried to investigate the phenomena happening in the region, no one has been able to find the solution to its problem. Now it's up to Davy on how he will solve the situation. Meanwhile, back on the outskirts of the region, Davy has been able to acquire lots of stones, and one of those is the Spirit Stone, a stone full of highly concentrated mana. These stones being powerful means they can sell them for a higher price. However, as he continues to wander the ruins, Davy finally finds the core of the curse. But since it's really gigantic, all that Davy could do is condense the spell within and dish out the 9th circle magic spells. After analyzing the curse's equation, Davy starts his modifications, and let's just say Davy decided to give the Hinds people something they always wanted, and it's none other than rain. Back in the kingdom, the corrupt nobles are now in worry as the evidence of their evil schemes is now in someone's hand. And what I mean by that is in Davy's hand. It's just a matter of time before they will meet their downfall. As a result, Duke Variata states that they have to fight against those who oppose them, even if it means blood will be shed. But before they can do so, they must first ensure that the classified information is reclaimed. From now on, they will be working more discreetly. And it is only Duke Variata that sees Prince Davy as a threat. He senses something more in Davy than just a mere powerless prince. He knows that as soon as Davy gains strength and any political footing, he knows that their plans will eventually go to ruin. However, he is also somehow confident that it will never happen, since Davy is now technically living in a hopeless wasteland, and there's no possible way that he'll be able to make it big in such a place. Little did this Duke know, Davy had now made his move to success. Now that rain has been pouring and Davy has control over the region's weather, it will take no time before the land of Hinds will prosper. 1 week later, Davy finally announces his plans to his people, and it's to plant something that would undoubtedly earn a lot. However, his goal of finishing the task in just 4 days is absurd to some. But as we all know, Davy has his ways. With the use of his magic, he yet again casts a spell to make his people a bit stronger and more eager than they were before. And just like that, the people are now pumped to start the job. But the question is, what will they actually plant anyway? And Davy being Davy, first analyzes the situation. What they need to produce is something that has been overwhelmingly supplied but is still in scarcity. And there's no other product for that other than moongrass. Moongrass is a plant that is really delicate and hard to grow in certain weather conditions. It is only grown in areas in the western continent. That's why they're sold at a higher price. Moongrass is something that most alchemists and magicians use for their potions and other researchers. As a result, it's a high demand product with a limited supply. But as mentioned earlier, it's hard to grow in certain climates. And let's just say the Hinds territory is a great example of a place moongrass would never grow. But since Davy now has the power of the gods, he can literally adjust the region's weather like an AC. That said, growing the plant wouldn't be a problem. Now the real problem is finding the vegetarians of the forest. On the other side of the Hinds region, Yuria Helishana, an elf chief, is seen. She's visited by her master, who goes to tell her that in her dream, the spirits have placed a curse on the elf forest. Trying to convince Yuria to leave the forest for her safety, however, Yuria seems to be persistent in staying, as she believes that whatever happens is all a part of the order of nature, and that she is not giving up on the idea that there will be someone who will save the forest from dying. Going back to Davy, he's now made his way to the elf's forest to find the seedling for the moongrass plant. With the help of the forest spirit, he's then guided to the ocean of moongrass plants, which is a sacred place for the elven kind. As Davy enters, before he can start getting the moongrass seedlings, he first needs to make a contract with the moongrass goddess to avoid any conflict. And after seeing Davy being civil with the spirits, Yuria seems to be astonished by his abilities. As a result, she now sees Davy as the way to save the village. Now going back to Davy, after acquiring the moongrass seedling, the work immediately starts. However, to Davy's surprise, 4 days worth of work is already finished in just half a day. Now the only thing they'll do is wait for the flowers to grow. 4 months have passed by, and the word about the moongrass plantation spread like wildfire. Now Davy doesn't need to worry about marketing his products, and since something interesting is already happening in the Hinds territory, almost all of the people from different continents are talking about it. And Redria, the head of the Ruby Red Tower, states that something interesting seems to happen in the east, and Elder Yulrist needs to prepare himself. Now that the moongrass leaves are ready to be sold, and Davy has also laid his plan smoothly with the marketing strategy, all that they need to do now is cause more commotion in the continents to ensure the success of their business. The moongrass is said to be sold 2 times a month, and the supplies are insufficient for both the east and west continents to use, making the moongrass price spike uncontrollably. As rumors spread, people from all over the continent come rushing in to get their hands on the moongrass whenever it's released, or even to see if it's real. Since it is so hard to get any intel on whether their products are real or not, some customers who really want to get their hands on products even try to bribe the captain guard, which also serves as Davy's right hand in paving their way to get their hands on the moongrass. One prospective customer named Manhawss, a 4th class expert of the Green Tower, tried to bribe the captain guard to let him meet with Davy exclusively. He gave him a back-shining jewelry. That said, the captain guard accepts the gift. Little did Manhawss know that everything was according to plan. Turns out, Davy, being smart, forms a tactic that will surely work incredibly in their favor. He asks his captain guard to entertain anyone who tries to bribe their way into getting their hands on the moongrass. As mentioned earlier, as the right hand of Davy, the captain guard will be the customer's next target, since he will be the easiest person to meet with. If there are cases in which people try to bribe him, Davy orders him to accept it as he sees it as an opportunity to add up to their financial resources. Talk about being strategic. And in return, the captain guard will show them a good packaged bottle of moongrass flowers. It's not for selling, but just for showing, to make sure that the rumors will continue to spread. This way, Davy and the Hinds region will ensure that the value of their products will rise as much as possible. Just like that, Davy's plan worked. Amazed by Davy's tactics, now the captain guard can't seem to believe when Davy gave him the jewelry he was able to get from the said bribing earlier for them to use. I mean, in the end, Davy will definitely earn more once the moongrass products are released to the public. On the other hand, the Elder of the Red Tower, Yulis, is now having a meeting regarding the Hinds region and Davy. They're also amazed by how intelligent Davy is in the business, and realizing that Davy is slowly making Hinds region a place of trade really amazes them to the core. That said, knowing Davy will also be a great asset to them, their goal now is to make a good relationship with him as much as possible. On the other side of the continent, Elena still seems to have not moved on yet with the idea of how Davy is able to kill a high-tier vampire using the sacred sword that she herself hasn't still been able to awaken. It's another busy day in the Hinds region, and purchases of the land by auction are taking place. It seems like Davy really did utilize all of their resources. That said, he has also received an important message, a letter from the royal palace. As the auction continues, many noblemen try to fight over one piece of land in the Hinds region. It gets more intense each and every day, but this is something that Davy is longing for. Even the empty residential houses were purchased at rates comparable to developmental areas in the capital. That's how intensely in demand their lands are. Other than land, people also start to get interested in items grown or made in the said region. If things continue to go smoothly as it is, in no time, the annual revenue of Hinds region should be around 1.05 million gold, which will make them the wealthiest region in the kingdom. That said, they need to ensure that the production of items, especially moongrass, is monitored to maintain the balance of supply and demand. On the other hand, remember the letter Davy received in the last episode? It turns out it is a royal invitation. The contents of the letter were simple. It just compliments Davy's achievements, which is something that he never felt before. That said, in order to praise him properly, Davy needs to return to the kingdom for a short visit. Although Davy doesn't intend to show up, later on, he eventually gives in as he's also thinking about carrying out the next part of his plan. Then, a flashback from when Davy was still in the Hall of Heroes occurs. In this said flashback, Sarut, one of the greatest blacksmiths, asked Davy to finish something that he wasn't able to do. After doing so, Davy can do whatever he wants with it. He can publicize it as his own or even sell it at a higher price. As long as he finishes it, he can do anything about it. That said, on the day Davy is about to return to the capital, he opts to visit the said place Sarut told him to check, and it's none other than the Valashad region. The man's legacy lies there, and the legacy is said to be made with the same material as the Holy Sword, Kaldaras. As Davy finally arrives at the region's entrance, which is now Queen Linessa's home, the atmosphere is eerily tense. Instead of revealing his identity, Davy decided to use a disguise. Due to this, he wasn't given permission to enter. Seeing Davy getting seized makes some of the men in charge laugh. This made Davy wonder. Since he can't enter, Davy rests for a while. At that time, he is able to meet an old man who shows him how the men in charge are charging tolls, which is, by the way, illegal. Seeing this made Davy a bit furious. As emotional as it can get, the old man even offers a coin to Davy so that he can enter, as Davy reminds him of his grandson. Thankful for the flattering offer, Davy gives the coin back, stating that he appreciates the old man's kindness, but he should save it to buy something nice for his grandson. Fearlessly, Davy confronts the man at the entrance, stating that it's illegal to collect tolls from people. In response, they begin to laugh their eyes out, believing that a mere child like Davy has no power over them, so they keep on ignoring his orders. Not knowing Davy is the kingdom's crown prince, one of the men points his sword at him, and as the old man interferes, as the man is about to smash the old man's head, Davy stops him immediately. As Davy is now irritated with just one swing of the sword, the man is decapitated immediately. As the others witness the scene, obviously everyone becomes furious. However, they can't possibly match Davy's strength. And just right on time, Viscount Garetta, the one assigned in the region, shows up as the commotion continues. At this point, Davy can't keep hiding his identity. That said, as he shows his mithril identity pendant, the said powerful Viscount immediately bows down his head. The Viscount tries to explain the corruption happening in the region. However, Davy isn't buying his reasons. The Viscount then says it's unfair that the prince visited undercover and without a warrant. This just made Davy laugh. That said, since the Viscount has already been involved in the region's evil acts, Davy can't possibly let it slide. Guess what? What happens to those people who defy the national law? Yup, that's right. Immediate execution. As the old man and Davy make their journey through the region, the old man informs Davy that it was when the refugees of the Hines region started flooding in that the exploitation became severe, and those who stood on their side were purged. That's the same way the old man's son passed away. At that moment, Davy realizes that he didn't remind the old man of his grandson, but it was his son he reminded him of. The old man's son must be kind-hearted, standing up for the people, and that's admirable. As they arrive at the historic site of the Thousand-Day Night Market, the old man thanks Davy for saving him and avenging his son. After doing so, they now part ways. At the said site, Davy immediately does his work, trying to figure out the passcode that Sarut has left for him to solve. The entire site has been codified, which means the surroundings are full of patterns. The said code points simply to a single thing, and that's the treasure that Sarut wants Davy to finish. After a while, Davy is able to find the said secret entrance. As they roam the empty dungeon, Davy immediately finds the chest that Sarut is talking about. The intense power it emits is incomparable. Davy has never seen a person's thoughts materialize so strongly. As he takes a closer step to the said chest, Davy reveals something. The Thousand-Day Blacksmith, a nickname given to Sarut after hammering away for 1,000 days straight without breaks, is what is known by many. But his own kind, the dwarves, called him by something else, and it's the Devil's Blacksmith. Sarut toyed with mana to surpass the limits of regular blacksmithing. Sarut went beyond crossing lines into the area of vices. The said treasure is his final work, which Davy will now finish. One is the nameless red blade that slays the living, while the other is the nameless blue blade that slays the dead. Now it's Davy's job to take care of the said legendary two twin blades. It turns out that the twin sword is an ego sword, just like the Kaldaras. They've been created to find their owner themselves. Now that the swords are in Davy's hand, all he needs to do now is do all the finishing touches. But before that, he needs fire, and not just ordinary fire, but one that can provide way more heat than a normal one, just like the fire from the Dwarven Furnace. That said, Davy has now made his way to the capital. As he enters the palace, Vespus welcomes him with a great compliment on how he is able to grow such a successful business for his territory. Alongside that, he's also welcomed by the intense atmosphere enveloping the whole place. Vespus then informs Davy that the king has gotten a note of the list of corrupt nobles from the leaked documents Davy has handed Marquise Peltris, and the king didn't take it lightly. Now the said nobles on the list are stripped of their titles and are scheduled to be executed. Davy didn't expect the king's serious reaction to the incident, and for him, it's making things a little complicated. Before he can even take a breather, one of his evil stepbrothers, Carlos, shows up to ruin his day. That said, Davy then lets Vespus leave as it seems that Carlos has something to say to him. Carlos then states that Davy has gone all cocky just because he had one successful business venture. I mean, who wouldn't? Hearing this made Davy laugh a little, knowing that Carlos is saying all this because he was just jealous of his success. That's why he decided to spit some facts to slap Carlos with reality. He asks Carlos if he even knows the significance of what he's done, and that people see him as an idiot. This made Carlos furious as Davy continuously mocks him. However, before he can even land a hit at Davy, he is already defeated, especially knowing that Davy has extreme power over him. Little did Carlos know that Davy also bested him with a sin that cannot be lifted even by magic. It's the greatest sin in the country. It's a present that Davy is offering to his evil stepbrother. The next day, as the conference starts, it seems like the nobles and the king are talking by themselves how the moongrass business that Davy has started has been helping the country a lot. The irony in this is that they don't even let Davy join the said meeting. Instead, he is left alone in the side of the room just hearing their conversations. They start talking about how they can expand the moongrass business to looking prosper continuously. However, thank God, the king has gotten notice of Davy's efforts, and he even asked Davy if he has something that he wishes, as the king will surely grant it. Hearing this made the nobles glare intensely. This made Davy smirk a little, and as a wise man that he is, he decided to request for some time to think about it. Now going back to the moongrass business, the nobles have taken consideration to invest more in the business, since they think it's the perfect one to make the country wealthy. However, Davy has something on his mind, which is to invest in needs like food and water. Surprisingly, Duke Farietta, the leader of nobles, also has the same in mind, as he tries to propose to the other nobles that covering the basic things first is a good way to go. This made Davy somehow amazed by him. However, his true intentions start to show up, as he shows a letter from the Holy Kingdom stating that they want Davy to visit their region to officially make him saint and validate his manifestation of the stigmata. At first, this infuriates the nobles. However, when they heard that as Davy is away, a new territory lord will be appointed to Hein's kingdom, this made the nobles' eyes sparkle. However, Duke Varietta already has someone in mind, and it's none other than Carlos. But it seems like the present that Davy has given him has started to manifest. Ribbit. Seeing how foolish Carlos is acting in front of the national conference due to the sin that Davy gave him, the king has decided to confine him until further notice. This leaves Davy taking authority once more. He states that someone childish like Carlos couldn't possibly run a whole territory by himself. Davy also bluntly opens up how the evil intentions of the Duke and the nobles are clearly seen. This made the atmosphere in the hall a bit intense, if I could say so. That said, instead of debating more on what to do, Davy states that the key solution is to take care of the Holy Kingdom's request. After all, the Holy Kingdom is still a place where humans live, so trading with them using goods is still an option. Davy then receives a call from Vice Bishop Bellium, which shocks the nobles. It seems like the Holy Kingdom wants to do business with the Heinz territory. That said, the meeting went smoothly thanks to Vice Bishop Bellium. In exchange for the Holy Kingdom's cooperation, Davy promises to give them good quality items. After all, if you want special treatment, give something equal in exchange. It's pretty much how businesses work. Since the territory needs quite some time to fully develop, and what I mean by quite some time is roughly around 10 to 20 years. That said, Davy opted to start a new business, and it involves the continent's greatest technicians, dwarves. Davy immediately asks permission from the king to visit the only known place where dwarves reside in the continent, the Yellow Rock tribe. Although at first the nobles and the king is quite hesitant about Davy's proposition, they eventually give in. As Davy reaches the region, a guard prevents him from entering. However, after introducing himself, he, together with some royal guards, are given permission to enter. Inside the village, Davy is able to meet up with the tribe elder, Golda, and for the first time in Golda's life, it's quite rare for him to meet a human of his liking. That said, their trading relationship is off to a good start. However, Golda seems to shift moods after he hears that Davy has some private request. Golda informs Davy that the village is in a difficult situation, and they cannot meet Davy's demands. And when Davy asks what this problem is, Golda states that they can't possibly tell outsiders. That said, Golda permits Davy to stay in the village for a few days. However, if he is to cause any trouble, he would immediately be kicked out. Golda now walks off when Davy decides to check on his information, and oh boy, Davy's eyes sparkled as he sees that Golda wishes to participate in creating the Flare of Beginnings, which is known as the Dwarves' Holy Sword. Since Davy wants to learn about forging, he decides to come along with Golda, who is on his way to the workshop. However, he wasn't welcomed warmly considering he is a prince. The other dwarves start to scold Golda for bringing a human into the main workshop. Golda's older brother, Golgoda, who is also the tribe's first elder, tells Golda to explain his reasons to them properly. However, the others don't believe his reasons, saying that he must be drunk or something. Before things get intense, Golgoda then voices out, saying it's alright. After all, Golda is still a village elder, and they need to respect his decisions and judgments as well. That said, Golgoda bluntly reminds Davy that he will allow him to be at the workshop with respect to his younger brother's choice. However, if Davy is to do anything out of line, Golgoda himself will immediately crush Davy's head. Meanwhile, with a big smile on his face, Davy assures that he'll behave and not cause any trouble at all. It is then revealed that the giant sword with a length of 2 meters and a width of 30 centimeters. Although it's called the sword, it looks no different than a big decoration. Its alias is the sword that does not cut. David thought it would be more accurate to say it cannot cut rather than to say it does not cut. What Davy is talking about here is the dwarf's holy sword. The dwarves continue with their work, as Davy sees Golgoda trying to fix the sword. At the back of his mind, it's useless, knowing that there's no way possible that it could be fixed anymore. Even the other dwarves are worried about his health. Then, to make things a bit gloomy, Thors from the Black Rock tribes arrive. They want to take the holy sword from the dwarves, considering the Yellow Rock tribe's blacksmiths are not skilled enough to forge it back in place. And instead of fighting for the ownership of the sword, Golgoda, already given up, decides to surrender the sword to Thors fully. However, before he can even do so, Davy asks him a question. Does Davy inquire if he is truly a master blacksmith? Since true master blacksmiths feel the spirit in every single one of their works and respects it, but the thought that Golgoda threw away that mindset from the get-go is disappointing. That said, Davy forges the sword himself. Thors then states that Davy is already overpassing his boundaries and that they will report this incident to the kingdom officially. And for the final time, Davy asks Golgoda once more if he will let his ego solve his problem for him. Since it seems like Golgoda has already forgotten that the item has been a pillar of their village, and for him to disrespect it even after knowing that the sword is already unfixable is just shameless. That said, without any second thought, Davy throws the holy sword into the fire pit, completely destroying it, which shocks every single one that witnesses the scene. As a natural reaction, the dwarves obviously got angry with him. However, Davy tells them that trying to fix a sword that's already broken in the first place is disrespectful. Even though it's hard for the dwarves, they need to realize the true meaning of the holy item. The item has long passed its lifespan, and since the dwarves are not confident enough to make another one or even attempt to create another one, there's no way possible that they can be called master craftsmen. These words really hit Elder Golgoda. However, even though they wanted to make another one, it was practically impossible to recreate it with their skills. And since they did not want to admit that fact, they eventually resorted to a self-rationalization that an item has no meaning if it hasn't been passed down for generations, and it was the worst thing they could do as craftsmen. As the dwarves feel dejected by Davy's factual words, they start saying that someone like Davy, who can't make such a holy item himself, shouldn't talk high. However, when Davy stated that he never mentioned he couldn't create one, everyone was shocked. The dwarves can't seem to believe that someone like Davy could even possibly do so. After all, even then, dwarves couldn't handle the metal that was heated in a strange configuration. As the dwarves keep on whining about how the legendary blacksmith Surut is the only one who is capable of doing so, Davy takes the forging hammer to show them what he's truly capable of. As he smashes the hammer to the metal alloy, and by breaking the rules of the dwarf forging book, he's able to make a holy sword that even Surut's descendants couldn't. These literally shock the hell out of the dwarves. Davy then states that in forging a holy item, the texture is what really matters. He even went on his way to explain to the dwarves how the technique works. Since the sword is technically not yet finished, Davy leaves the rest up to the dwarves. However, since the dwarves lack some skills even to add up the finishing touches, Davy's only advice is for them to make an effort to learn the craft. That said, this is where the negotiation enters. In exchange for a forging lesson, Davy is asking for something in exchange. That's definitely our Davy, always thinking like a businessman. As Davy shows them the other swords he has forged, the dwarves keep on getting amazed. However, what really caught their attention is the twin swords that Surut wants Davy to finish. That said, Davy states to the group that they'll be watching him as he adds the finishing touches to the said swords. And after knowing that the swords were forged by their ancestor, the dwarves literally agreed to accept Davy's request to use their workshop. He even gives Davy the bone of an unknown elder dragon. Even the others were shocked when the elder Golgoda showed this to Davy. They stored it because no one was skilled enough to put it to use, but if it's Davy, then maybe it'll be put to good use. However, since it's dwarves we're talking about, the other elders have also offered their workshops for Davy to use. Now they start arguing over which workshop Davy will use. That said, as the other dwarves start to offer their family heirlooms as well, Davy now has more than enough materials to start working. A flashback then occurs. In the said Hall of Heroes, Davy was able to grab the chance to touch the unknown Elder Dragon's bone. Davy reminisces how he gets annoyed back then learning about holy relics. However, back at the present, he is thankful he did so. As he continues forging, he does it in the most precise and accurate way possible, always thinking about the details each and every time. That said, he is able to add the finishing touches to Surut's last work. Now that it's finished, all that Davy needs to do now is name the swords. And let's just say he has a terrible naming sense. I mean, he literally named the red sword Red Flag, while the blue sword Blue Flag. Like, what? That said, he then tries the swords for himself. As he swings it, he easily cuts through the mithril stone without even having to apply any force or mana. And to make it even more unbelievable, the Blue Flag can even cut through mana. Now that's awesome. As Davy steps out of the workshop, he is shocked to know that he spent 4 days forging the daggers. The elders then saw the finished product of Davy, and they were quite amazed. When they saw the red and blue flag, something inside the dwarves ignited. Although they were taking things a bit too far, it sparks their inner blacksmith passion, which gives them momentum to complete the flare of the beginnings. A few weeks later, the dwarves have now finally refined their skills with the guidance of Davy. Now that they have got their pride under their control, they are very passionate master craftsmen. Their passion is as if they're beginners who just picked up the smithy hammer. Elder Golgotha then offers Davy a drink while thanking him for all that he did for the tribe. He also wanted to talk about something with Davy. Davy, however, gets nervous hearing this. However, it seems like Elder Golgotha just wants to ask Davy what the Yellow Tribe can give in exchange for everything Davy did for them. Before they can even discuss the latter, a red assassination dagger comes flying towards Elder Golgotha. Fortunately, Davy is able to block it on time before anything happens to the Elder. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Carlos is continuously embarrassing himself as the curse that Davy engraved on him keeps on affecting him. However, one man who calls himself Face appears out of nowhere. The said man then removes the curse Davy gave Carlos and even offers Carlos to sign a contract with him. In the said contract, Carlos will be able to ask someone to kill Davy for him. Face even states that they have already sent someone to kill Davy, and hearing this made Carlos form a contract with the said noble. Back at the Yellow Rock tribe, a magical beast who is a high-level shape-shifting vampire appears, trying to kill everyone. However, with the help of Davy, the Elder is saved from danger before the dagger can even stab him to death. However, that's not yet certain since the said beast is somehow stronger than they have anticipated. Now, Davy will face hand-on-hand with the said creature as he tries to save the whole village from danger. That said, Davy tries to move as carefully as he possibly can, especially since he is facing a high-level vampire. And what perfect time can he test his new toy than this time? That said, he grabs the twin swords and utilizes them to defeat the said beast. However, even with Ready Strike, the beast is reviving. A Lord-class vampire must have bestowed a level of immortality like this. The situation is not so relaxed. Davy has no time to investigate. Now it's time to use the blue flag. With the use of the said sword, Davy is able to sense someone hiding. As he found the filthy rat hiding nearby, Davy literally shocked the hell out of the man's soul as he got closer to him instantly. The man runs away as Davy keeps on chasing him since he knows that once Davy catches him, it'll already be the end of him. However, even with how much he tries to outrun Davy, he's just no match for Davy's strength and agility. That said, he has fallen into Davy's hand in the end. Now as Davy demands him to talk about where he is from and who ordered him to assassinate, the man keeps his mouth shut as much as he possibly can. However, as Davy uses his black magic called Samadhi Ignition, the man whose name is Pet Kid screams in agony. That said, he is able to tell Davy some surface level information, such as that he is a Viscount and that he is just taking revenge for the vampire maid before. But as Davy asks deeper questions, Pet Kid decides to choose death before he can even say any more words. That said, in just a split second, his whole body explodes. This scenario is quite taboo for vampires since it's punishment for them. I mean, how cruel is that? That said, Davy has also sensed that the curse that he put on Carlos has been undone, meaning that the person who did it must be formidable. Meanwhile, the whole Yellow Rock village is now destroyed by just one single beast. The elders then ask Davy to come inside since they have something to tell him. They ask for his help to look for a child who has gone missing since the incident, and also tell him that he should leave as soon as possible, since it's not safe for him to stay in the village anymore. In exchange for it all, Davy hands them the journal where all the forging steps are written for them to read as they try to add the finishing touches to the holy sword. Davy then tells them the truth that the beast is after him, not them, so that the village will be at ease from now on. After helping find the lost child, Davy will now leave the tribe. After he arrived at the Hinds territory, he became extremely busy once more, and with the help of the dwarves, the reconstruction of his territory is proceeding smoothly. Now as Davy tries to rest on his new ergonomic bed, a beast-like entity is lurking inside his blanket. Sheesh. That's hella scary. But I think we need to wait a little more to find out. That's all we have for today. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll be notified if we upload part 3 of this series. Until next time, bye!